I know a lot of people's first big question, especially big spectacle film, a lot of VFX. The first thing out of everyone's mouth that I've talked to about this film is like, yeah, but are the effects going to hold up? And there's something that happens right in the beginning of the film whenever I was watching. Big, awesome action set piece, and then you just go into a close-up. It looks good. It was awesome. You were in motion capture for the entire film.
Yes, we were. Pajamas.
How was it to traipse around in your mocap pajamas for 120-something days? I mean,
well,
they
Duncan worked 120 days. I worked like 20 days. It was great.
Slacker.
The pajamas are great. They're not great in winter in Canada, where it's minus 30 and everyone can see your penis. It's not...
Everyone?
Literally. No, those things are unforgiving. There's no way of hiding. But you also can't really see it in winter in Canada. So that's the one plus of winter in Canada. We were in motion capture the whole time, and it was an intimidating premise until we saw what we looked like, and then it was just the most exciting thing that's ever happened.
And as Garona, you were not in a motion capture suit. He's complaining about it being cold in Canada. Like the first half of your character being on screen, you're wearing less clothes than he was, and he was in CG and in pajamas. You didn't have to go through that mocap suit experience, but you were painted green.
You know what? I wasn't painted green in the movie, which is kind of cool, though. But that's what's really awesome about the effect is that, and also, I'm not gonna lie, I was happy to find out I didn't have to be painted every day. But what you see afterwards is sort of what skin really looks like. So the green changes with temperature, with emotion. And that's what I thought was really cool. You see her actually get flush, and they realized, I'm just kind of saying what they told me, is that instead of painting me, it would be better to do it afterwards so that it would really look like skin. You'd feel the pores. You'd be, when she's angry and she just ran, you'd feel it and you'd see it through the skin the way that you normally would, and as such. So it's cool.
Paul is right. When we were like early on trying out makeup tests and things like that, it was roughly around the same time that we started seeing marketing and advertising for Guardians of the Galaxy, and obviously there's a green character in that film. And we saw the way that they'd approached that, which was with the makeup, and we were like, this looks like she's been painted green. Like literally someone's just painted her green. So we thought the approach we would take is to rotoscope Paula after we finished shooting the film, and to actually grade her so you maintain all of the consistencies of natural skin tone. You just shift it all to green. And in my opinion, I think the results are better than painting someone green.
One of the notes, I watched it, I was in obviously a dark theater,
yes.
3D glasses on, trying to take notes. And what I deciphered from the scribbles that I had written in the dark were, how do you act with tusks? What was it like? I think I might have wrote, tusk acting, ? Check.
Yes, there is. And make sure that your mouth is not too dry, check. And yes, that was a concern. I mean, that was part of the whole deal, was how big they'd be and make them work in your mouth. And oh God, there's so many jokes there. Anyways, I wore them a lot. And it was something that was uncomfortable to begin with, but then it was like, I didn't feel fully like Garona until I had my teeth, and I knew something. I was like, where are my teeth? And once that was there, it was as if then I was there with her. I mean, it was that, and it was these incredible contact lenses we had that were really, really unique. Then each one was different, but when I put them in, it was like being not a human, because you didn't have the same vision. Felt like you had a vision of what maybe an animal might have. And so that with the tusks, and I was like, let's go be Garona. So I was thankful in the end.
I think you probably had the biggest acting challenge of everyone in the cast. Everyone had their individual challenges. Obviously, our mocap teams had their challenges of having to wear the silver pajamas.
It's cold.
And then Dominic Cooper obviously had his armor, which was pretty heavy, and Travis Fimmel had the same with all of the weapons, and Ben Foster obviously had to carry a staff, which was difficult.
That's tough for Ben. He had a hard job.
It's true.
He had longer hair.
You guys, they did not scrimp on like making it real. I mean, everything was that heavy. Right?
No,
it was pretty
true.
darn
It was,
heavy.
Anyone who knows Warcraft knows that everything's just kind of a little supersized and asymmetrical, and the design is very unique and has a real signature to it. And one of our challenges was to try and come up with a way to put that in a real world.
One of the interesting things is, as being I have worn fangs in something else, And that's easy because, you know, most people's front teeth are ahead of their bottom teeth. But when you wear the tusks, you're stuck like this and you're dribbling. And it's not, well, I dribbled. I don't know, you're too classy.
I didn't attempt to eat with them. You're right,
No, I
absolutely.
did. I would forget I had them in and but yeah, no, it was a real struggle. And like to be able to actually articulate properly and be heard. Most of the first month of filming was just me and Toby going, that was it, and that's what
We'll
Clancy did the whole
ADR it
film.
later. We'll fix the lines.
We'll ADR it later, little editing, it'll work.
Well, Duncan, for you as a directing challenge, obviously you're working with this entire mocap team, and you have concept art, and you're familiar with the franchise, so you have an idea of what these characters are going to look like. But to direct Rob and the rest of those guys who are playing the Horde as, you know, these are what your guys are going to be, so we really need you to exude that physicality. What was that like as a directing challenge for you?
Well, on the visual side, you know, obviously we had some pretty amazing references to get everyone kind of understanding who their character was and what they would end up looking like. There's a concept artist who works at Blizzard, a guy called Wei Wang, who has an amazing story in his own right. He was based in China. He was a fan of Warcraft. Didn't speak a word of English. Had been submitting fan art to Blizzard, and it was blowing them away. It was just like, this is amazing stuff. So they actually brought him across to the US and gave him a full-time job doing artwork for Blizzard. I had seen his artwork, and I was like, if we're going to do the orcs, we need this guy to design them. So Wei came on board and actually interpreted all of our main characters and took the orcs that we knew from the game and from the cinematics and turned them into these live action characters as stills. And that was the starting point for ILM, who did our visual effects, to turn them into our finished characters. But when ILM did their interpretations, they took those designs and they incorporated elements of our actors. So whether it was Rob or Toby or Clancy Brown, they would take aspects of the actor behind it and make that part of who the orc was.
Yeah, and from the other perspective was, obviously I played the game a lot. I played for 10 years, and there was an immense fear, I would say, in what we were doing. Because, we're in the pajamas, you got the stupid cameras on your head and your dots on your face, and I don't clean shave, and I had to clean shave every day, and I was just feeling not good about it.
You look like a baby.
I look like a baby. I look like 7 years old in my pajamas. And, there was this enormous kind of pressure to do it right, and I'm one of the fans of the product, of the game. So I needed it to look good, and if it had looked bad, I would have been crushed. And I was nervous right up until the end of month one, when we're just finishing prep, and Jeff White from ILM comes down to the stage where we're in our pajamas and figuring it all out, and he shows us a 30-second, 75% finished rendering of my face. And that made it real suddenly, because there was this sudden living, breathing thing, and from my perspective as an actor, the slightest tick, the slightest change of thought, the slightest anything read so clearly on Orgrim's face. And as soon as I saw that, the pressure fell off my shoulders, like the fear dissipated, and I was just entirely just assuaged in my belief that this was going to be done correctly, and that these things were going to be as eloquently handled as I so demanded, as a player. And from that point on, it was just every day we knew the level that it was going to be, and that was safe, and that was fun.
I really have to, my hat's off to Duncan. You can't know what a director's doing, especially in a movie like this, until the end, truly. And I was just like, oh my, it's an impressive thing you've done. And so I just, my hat's off to you. It's a really special.
Thank you, Paula.
Oh, and
that for me, that whole thing was the most encouraging thing, because from my perspective as a gamer, as somebody who has these expectations and demands of what this should be, of the standard that this should be, I've said all along that I was really, really, really happy. But I actually speak for a small segment of the audience. We the gamers, we have the film that we want. But what about you who don't play the game? What about you who have never heard of Warcraft? Are you going to love it? And Paula is that audience, you know what I mean? She loved it. So the most encouraging thing, apart from when I first watched it and first saw our stupid orc ugly faces, is literally it's how much Paul is enjoying it. You know what I mean? It's great.
What was it like working with everyone? Because you're juggling so many different storylines. I mean, you made Moon, one guy.
Yeah, one guy.
Amazing, right? Sam Rockwell. But juggling that as your cast to Source Code, where you have the same group of characters reliving this moment, all the way to Warcraft now. All right, this is a large undertaking with a lot of human beings and moving pieces.
Yeah.
What was that like for you as a director to just make sure everything had the care that it needed?
I'm going to do The Young and the Restless next. I think that's the plan.
Two-shot.
You're going to start back.
Two-shot.
No, it was amazing. You know, I think the fact that everyone agreed before we started this movie that Warcraft was such a big star in its own right that we were going to be able to cast the film with the people that we needed, as opposed to, you know, just trying to stick, you know, Hugh Jackman in it, and then that's how the film gets made. We were able to put the people who were right for the roles. And whether that was Ben Foster as Medivh, Dominic Cooper as King Lane, Ruth Negga, who plays Lady Taria, you know, Clancy Brown, I got to work with the Kurgan. You know, it's just so much fun, the people that I got to work with, and everyone was just all in. And I think that was the only reason that it worked, is that all of the cast were, you know, whether they had to wear the silver pajamas or the crazy oversized armor, everyone was just like, all right, I liked your films, I trust you, let's go for it. You know, what do you want me to do? And, you know, you did it, they did it, and it wouldn't have been possible without them having that, you know, taking that leap of faith.
Plus, you get to step into a world that you were so familiar with playing the game for so long, that there's that righteous both sense of responsibility but also wonder. Rob, for you, what was it like, I mean, walking onto these incredible sets and going, I'm here, it's real?
Yeah, I mean, I've told this story before, but I'll tell it better this time.
Please do, come on.
There was, you know, at this point, I'm over 600 days played, and I was at 500 in Wrath of the Lich King. So, I mean, it's, you know...
Yeah, you're like, yeah, you are.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I was Death's Demise, I was Light of Dawn, Celestial Defender. Nah, no big deal. And, yeah, I might as well be speaking Spanish.
You're speaking in tongues right now.
Exactly. So for me, you know, there were locations which I had spent... I mean, I've probably spent more time in some of these locations than I've lived in apartments. Like there are places that I am still going back to, and I've moved house 8 times. So to step onto a set where they built it, because one thing you have to understand is that gaming is an intensely personal thing. You know, it's yours. It's your experience, especially with WoW, where you're not a historical character, you're your own character thrust into historical events, or current historical events. You know, this is your experience. This is your personal thing. And, you know, to be as dedicated to the game as I was, it meant a lot to me. So to step onto a set with something so intensely personal to me, and to see that other people cared just as much. And I'm not talking necessarily about Duncan or Bill Westenhofer, who also played. I'm talking about the amount of people that worked on this movie that were players, that loved it as much as I did, that gave up better paying jobs, that gave up better positioning jobs to come and do a tentpole passion project. I mean, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, those movies don't exist.
That doesn't happen. I mean, maybe Star Wars, but you know, apart from like what
Star
like
what?
those, yeah, Star thingy, Star farts. Apart from Star Wars, you know, passion projects don't exist with this budget, and this one did. And then I set foot onto Stormwind Throne Room, and I was by myself, which is why I don't know why I keep telling this story, because I was by myself. There were no witnesses, but I wept, I cried, and because you know there was suddenly a sense of belonging that I had never really felt before. You know, there were all these other people, like maybe 1,000 people that worked on this movie, that shared my intensely unique and personal experience to the point where they were willing to put up hundreds of millions of dollars to build it right and do the right film and take a director who knows the game, who was willing to fight tooth and nail so that we get the film that we want. So stepping foot, whether it was Black Rock Mountain, whether it was a Lion's Pride Inn, or whether it was Stormwind Throne Room, I didn't cry every time, but there were plenty of times where I did get, you know, like after the first time, it was just kind of like, I'm cool. But it was an amazing, life-changing experience.
I think that what we wanted to do is we wanted to make a film where people who were fans of Warcraft, people who spent large chunks of their lives in it, could go watch this movie and they feel like they've been taken home. You know, someone where they'd see what the camera's looking at and they'd go, I know what's over there. If they just panned the camera, I'd know exactly what's over there. And, you know, we wanted the fans to have that experience, but we also wanted them to have an experience of being able to take people who don't know anything about Warcraft and say to them, this is why I cared so much about this place. This is why I spent so much time there, because it gave me this feeling that you're going to get watching this movie.
All right, guys, keep those hands together. Let's give it up one more time for director Duncan Jones, Paula Patton, and Rob Kazinsky. Thank you for coming out to YouTube Space so late tonight. We'll see you again soon. Good night.